Something tends to happen to people in their mid to late 20s, maybe a bit earlier, maybe a bit later. It's not an age thing, but instead it's the fact that they stop caring. Or, to put it in more accurate terms, they stop letting themselves be seen caring. They stop caring about their work or stop showing people that they care about ideas or about the thing that they're building with their life. They develop this kind of studied indifference. It's a cool and measured distance from anything they're actually invested in or anything that matters to them. And if you ask them about it, they will tell you that they've just become more realistic, or they understand that, oh, this is never going to happen, or, I don't need to do this. It's not important in my life. They tell themselves they've become more mature or less naive than they used to be when they used to care so much and so openly about everything else. However, in my opinion, that is not what actually happened. That is not what they are accurately describing. What happened was that they tried something new. They tried something and they put themselves fully and they invested themselves into something creative, and it ended up not working, or it wasn't received the way that they needed it to be, or someone made them feel embarrassed for putting themselves out there or trying that thing. And instead of actually sitting with that emotion, instead of understanding why they felt that way or continuing regardless of the failure, they made a quieter and less acknowledged decision, and honestly a lot more popular than you'd hope to see nowadays. They decided that caring too much was the problem with it. Nonchalance is a defense mechanism wearing a personality. It's just defense with good PR. It's telling everyone that, wow, you don't need to care about something, because if you do and you put yourself out there and you fail, you just invested yourself into something for no reason. And the reason it's so effective, it's one of the most effective defense measures, is because it's socially rewarded. The person who acts nonchalant, the person who seems unbothered, who holds their work loosely and tells people, I don't care if I fail, or I don't care if I don't actually get the promotion, or someone who can talk about what they're making without any visible necessity for it to land for them, they're read as confident. They're read as someone who is actually well aware and confident of the fact that they don't need it. And there's someone who has arrived at some kind of creative maturity that people who are still visibly hungry haven't arrived to yet or haven't reached yet. Nonchalance looks like growth. It looks like maturity. But it is the complete opposite of that. In my opinion, it is the polarizing opposite of growth. Because the thing about creativity, and I mean genuine, real creativity. I mean the kind that produces something that never existed before. The kind that produces something that could not have come from anyone besides yourself. The thing about that genuine creativity is that it requires a level of genuine investment that looks from the outside so uncomfortable and uncomfortably close to desperation. That is what people miss nowadays. The person who makes something genuinely original is almost always somebody who needed to make it. They had no choice but to make it. They were someone who couldn't not make it. And I don't think many people have ever been feeling that. I think too many people are comfortable nowadays with the idea that if I don't make it, I can still fall back on my school, I can still fall back on my job, I can still fall back on my parents. I think people are too comfortable, and the issue with that is that you never put yourself out there to fail. And someone who has had something sitting in them that required a sort of extraction, regardless of whether the extraction would have killed them or not, or was going to be well received, is someone who is so dangerous because they have nothing to lose and everything to gain. That specific neediness, that specific desperation, that slightly embarrassing form of hunger is not a flaw in the creative process. Instead, it is the creative process itself. It is the entire thing. The desperation is what makes creativity so good. That's what makes it such a positive thing to humanity. The nonchalant creator is not actually creating anything at all. What they're doing is producing, and there's a big difference between the two. Production is simply the application of a skill to a brief or to a project or to a scope. Creation is the exact thing that happens when someone cares so much about an idea that sprouts in their mind that they are willing to look foolish enough in service of it, willing to be wrong about it in public, willing to fail, willing to accept and put something into the world that might not work the way that they need it to, and even if it doesn't, they will try again, and they will sit with the failure. Because the alternative to that, which is not making the thing, not producing, not creating, is so much worse for the genuine creator than failing ever will be. And you are unable to do that. You're unable to attain that hunger and that desperation from a distance. You cannot physically or even mentally make something that matters while simultaneously protecting yourself from the possibility that it won't happen. The detachment and the depth, those two things are mutually exclusive. So you must pick one. Either you look nonchalant and fail and stop trying and you accept the failure as what it is and don't learn from it, or you tell yourself, I don't care how I look from the outside. I don't care if people think I look like a fucking psycho. I don't care if I'm considered an extremist. When I fail, I will invest everything I have again and again and again and again and keep failing until it finally creates. Like that's all they're looking for. They're looking for their creation to actually become an output. Now, I think the people whose work has actually stayed with me are the creative ones. You don't look at a nonchalant person and say, wow, they're really impressive. I wish I could be like them. The people whose writing or music or film or novels or anything like that, or whatever, like literally anything it was, who has left a mark on my life that I'm still carrying years later, were not the nonchalant people. They were the creative people who did not care to be embarrassed, even if they did fail. Not a single one of them had studied how to be a cool person or how to be nonchalant. They were, and almost exclusively without any sort of exception, embarrassingly invested in it. They were visibly hungry, and it was the kind of person who, if you asked them about their work, they would talk for way too long and over-explain everything and tell you far too much about it and intensely, than to care too much about how much they're telling you about it or how stupid they look while explaining their passion to you. The caring is what got into the work and made it successful, and that is exactly why the work gets into your mind, because you care about that work. The thing that's sitting in your mind right now, the thing that you're hearing in your head, echoing over and over, reverberating, is that even a word? That is the very thing that you should be pursuing without any sort of remorse, without any sort of regret or embarrassment. But maybe if you're not convinced yet, maybe if you don't understand how detrimental nonchalance is, here's what it actually costs from you. Here's what it takes away. It's not simply just the work that doesn't get made. It's not just the ideas that stay in your head because putting them out there makes you feel too exposed as a person. But it also costs the version of yourself that exists on the other side of full investment. The person who found out exactly what they were exactly and actually capable of when they stopped protecting themselves from stupid social hierarchies of embarrassment and making themselves look good in public or the possibility of failure. That person will never and does not get built from a safe distance. What they get built in is the specific and uncomfortable and completely necessary investment and exposure of caring too much about a project that they cannot live with until it has been built, until it has been shown to the world and produced. Not even to the world, to themselves. Just produced for themselves to feel satisfied. The nonchalant feels like protection. I can say that because so many people have tried to invest themselves into that nonchalant simply so they don't need to be creative. And it may feel like it's working in the short term. It is, however, in my opinion, it is the slowest, and it is a very, very, very quiet and very unacknowledged acceptance of the fact that you will never be great, of the fact that you will never create something that you will ever be proud of. So if you want that, if you understand that you will never be great and you will never succeed in the thing that is echoing in your mind right now, then be nonchalant. I do not care. If you can listen to my rant and still want to be a nonchalant person and be scared of putting yourself out there, then be that person. Because we don't need people like you in this world. That's as simple as it gets. Somewhere underneath that entire nonchalant act, underneath that cool and distant and studied and unbothered persona or quality that you've been putting out there into the world and been wearing long enough that it started to genuinely feel like yourself, the hunger is still there. The hunger will always be there. It will always be echoing in your mind. It will always be haunting you and telling you to feed it. The only issue with that is that you stopped feeding it in order to make it look like you were preserving all the food that you had to give it.